today, the religion is there that it says it's off by default. So yes, you want to ship your product, but you want to ship your code, but it's off by default, and it has to be secure and also pass the final security review. I've talked a couple of times about mandates and about how really the success depends upon engineers getting it. Back in 2003, when we first started with security training, we had a single course that was called Security Basics. And we had a mandate that every engineer in every product team had to go through annual training. By the time 2003 or 2004 and 2005 came around, and people are starting to complain, it's like, well, I already took that class, and I didn't learn anything the first time. Why should I go back and take it again? That's an example of the mandate not necessarily working. We came back and we said, training is a key element of this, so that you give engineers the tools to actually do this themselves. We now have a couple dozen classes that are focused on a per discipline basis, whether this is targeted at a developer or a tester. We even have classes that are security for management, because it does actually trickle down. Secure coding practices, and this is an ongoing effort. We've got a couple dozen at this point. We'll continue to develop more. That's internally developed training. One of the other kinds of training is externally developed and delivered to an internal audience. When I was on IIS, one of the turning points for us was NIMDA and Code Red, where every single developer, tester, and program manager on that team took it personally. The amount of pain that was caused to customers because they were running the product that they developed, that was a real shock to those individuals. And it was a visceral learning experience for us. And I know how powerful that was because it personalized that learning, and it really helped individuals internalize it. Now, I don't want every product team at Microsoft to have to go through that, but I do want every developer to actually have that same sense of that same visceral feel for exactly how bad things could get and how responsible they are. One of the ways we do that is with BlackHat. We were sitting around one day, Window Snyder and I, and she said, I go to so many of these conferences, I see so many of these talks that would be really fascinating for internal audiences. And much as Jeff would love us to send 10,000 engineers to BlackHat, that's not really feasible. So what we did was we actually said, we're going to model a conference for internal audiences. We call it BlackHat because the background on the full-time badge is blue. So there's a nod to Jeff. Windows said, oh, there's so many engineers that need to know this. And I came back and I said, you know what? Actually, there's a bunch of execs that really need to get the feel for this as well. You need to get that gut punch, that reality check on exactly how things are. So we've done 3 of them so far, March, October, and then March again this year. And you can see that some of the speakers we've had. And these talks have been very impactful across the executive as well as across engineers. So Johnny Long got done talking about Google hacking, and one of the engineers from the SQL team went back to his office. And the SQL team they are rightfully proud of the work that they've done. And I hear a lot of times, SQL 2005, it's all off by default, baby. Well, this guy went back to his office and he did a little Google hacking based on the tutorial that Johnny had given. And here was a feature that was off by default, but that was remotely, anonymously accessible over the internet found through Google. And that's kind of a wake-up call for this guy. It's like, whoa, that's the feature I wrote, and I was quite sure that they would go and deploy it correctly. Not quite so. Oh, and there's another one. You know, you saw that HD's name was up there a lot of times, and there were a number of other folks from the Metasploit project that have also come and presented. And there are people on my team that actually accuse me of being a Metasploit fanboy. And, you know, yes, okay. The reason Metasploit comes back over and over again is because that is, I need execs and I need engineers to really fully understand the powerful tool set that is available to anybody who wants it, free to download, and exactly what that can do. There was, you know, this last March, HD was presenting on Metasploit 3, and he talked about, yeah, we rewrote the license agreement, and then we've also created a 503C, was it a 5013C, you know, the tax deductible. And Dave Treadwell, the VP of the .NET Developer Platform, leaned over to the guy he was sitting next to, and he said, I can just see it now. You know, the annual giving campaign at Microsoft, where they're out saying, you should donate to United Way, donate to the charity of your choice, and Microsoft will match. I can just see it coming, you know, that somebody's going to go donate to a Metasploit project, and then Microsoft's going to match that gift. You know, it's a sad world, huh? So these have been impactful in other ways as well, and for executives. So Scape came and talked about temporal return addresses. And if any of you have seen that talk or read his paper, it's pretty interesting from a research and an engineering perspective. The actual applicability of that to widespread exploitation is probably not all that great. But as he was up there talking about this, I leaned over to Jim Alchin and I said, you know, Jim, this is just like the kind of report the performance team comes and delivers. It's that quality of research, it's that quality of presentation and deliverable. And Jim was actually just astounded. It's like, wow, where did this guy even come up with the idea, first of all? And then why did he go spend all that time? So that's the power of the community that I needed to make sure individuals understood there. Again, another example is Halvar Flake came and presented on BinDiff. And you know, there's a difference between telling and seeing. Just like I said to you guys earlier, you need to touch it and feel it, and we're here to show our work. Well, you know, we'd heard for a long time that you could actually go and do binary diffing, and then you could quickly identify where you could take a patch from Tuesday, and then you could quickly identify where the vulnerability was. Well, it's, you know, at a theoretical level, yeah, I get it, but to actually see Halvar demonstrate that, and then in a matter of during his presentation of 30 minutes, he actually takes the last patch and reverse engineers it, and then graphs it and says, here's exactly where the flaw was. And then, yeah, it took me another 4 hours to write the exploit for it. That has a bit more power. The one other thing that I'll highlight here is that Dan Kaminsky and Josh Lackey. Josh Lackey is a pen test lead from Microsoft, and these guys co-presented on a Windows Vista FSR. And this was a presentation for an internal audience on what was the pen test for Windows Vista, what did it look like? And I always have these, you know, I reach, the ideas I come up with are really out there. Like I dreamt 9 months ago that we could actually have a whole track on Windows Vista at BlackHat. What was I thinking? I don't know. But I said to Dan, I'd love to go give that Windows Vista FSR talk at BlackHat. And so Dan, as he's jokingly going through this, he said, you know, there was a suggestion made that we could go give this talk at BlackHat. Well, after I did some editing, here's what I came up with. And he shows a blank screen, you know. Because we just weren't going to release that kind of information. Well, don't go anywhere, because John Lambert, while he doesn't have the complete presentation, he will give you about half of Josh and Dan's talk later today on what was the final security review for Windows Vista. What was it like? So one of the other key elements of BlackHat is the relationships that actually get built and then strengthened between the security research community and individual engineers and testers and program managers. So I remember the first one, Matt Conover came, and we were sitting in the green room, the staging room in the back, and I introduced Adrian Marinescu, who's also giving a talk later today. He's the lead developer for the heap. And I said to Matt, oh, here's Adrian, he owns the heap. And one of the other guys said, yeah, everybody owns the heap. You know? But it was that connection that actually really helped Adrian understand exactly what attackers were doing. And it's those relationships and that dialogue that really is the essence of the security outreach, security community outreach. A lot of people say, why bother? I think there's some companies down in California that say, why bother? You know, you're just pandering to these guys. Well, security community outreach is not marketing, and it's not just pandering. It's really about dialogue to see how jointly we can protect customers. How we do this is we engage the community to personalize the engagement with what would otherwise be a relatively faceless corporation. We participate technically with the community. And you know, this is a challenge for us because it's difficult for us as we build tools internally to do fuzzing or to do other testing. It's difficult for us to actually go and release those because we have a lot of customers that still run on NT4 or Windows 2000 or IE5. And as we use those tools to make improvements in Windows Vista, I'd like nothing more than to actually give back to the community and contribute in a meaningful way. I can't do that though. So at this point, our contribution back to the community is in the form of Windows Vista or improved security products, so that we're taking away the low-hanging fruit. You know, if you think about low-hanging fruit and how easy it was to find vulnerabilities in Windows in years past, I was like, we've taken all those watermelons that were lying there on the ground and we've removed those. So our contribution back to the community is to actually make you work harder to find the remaining vulnerabilities and advance the state of security science that way. And finally, the last piece of security community outreach is really to promote responsible disclosure. I think that the responsible disclosure, full disclosure, really hinges upon, I do full disclosure because the frickin' ISV doesn't pay attention. They don't actually do anything. So here's an opportunity for Microsoft to communicate back and say, actually, we're taking steps, and here's exactly what we're